All right, we'll get started. I am Joe Russell from here at Washington. I want to thank everybody for being here physically or those who are at home on our webinar. For tonight's kind of informational session and FAQ in regards to the projects at Washington that have been delayed. And so I want to thank Greg Chewinski for being here, the Director of Buildings and Grounds, and wants to make sure that everyone has the right information in regards to upcoming projects and timelines and information, and have an opportunity for the community to ask questions so that we know exactly what's going to transpire every month year. So I really thank everybody for being here. I know this is a sensitive and emotional topic for everybody, and I'm really hopeful that we're going to have lots of information and understanding about next steps so that we feel good about it as a community moving forward. So again, I want to thank you guys for being here this evening, and I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Hey, Jamie, just a quick check. Can you hear me all right there?
Yeah, we can hear you. What I would ask is that the attendees that are online, if you can hear Mr. Chewinski fine, can you please click the raise hand button in Zoom? Yeah, we got raised hands, so you're good. Okay, thanks.
Right. Thank you. So, yes, I am Greg Chewinski, Director of Buildings and Grounds for Wauwatosa School District. So, and to echo Joe, I also want to thank you all for being here to attend this meeting today so that we can discuss the communication that went out, the current timeline for the project going forward, and certainly give all here and online a chance to ask questions. So I'll start it with a presentation here, and then we'll open it up to questions after that. So just kind of a current situation, as most of you all know, but I will kind of just go over it. In 2018, obviously, $124.9 million referendum was passed, and certainly included in that was playground improvements for Washington Elementary School. Actual funds to complete that project were presented to the school board in February of 2022 with the approval to move forward with this project in March of 2022. Following that approval, we did immediately start working on design and permitting process and all of that. And since then, the project has been delayed with, and I'll get into a timeline a little bit further, but with a start date of May of 2023 and a completion in September of 2023. So as was relayed in the communication sent out on July 8th, there was no clear timeline established for the planning of this project, hence it being delayed for a couple of years throughout the referendum. Buildings and Grounds, when we started the process, we, for the Washington improvement projects, a lack of planning did delay the project. It was kind of the root cause of the situation that we're currently in now, and of this unacceptable situation. You know, we utilized an outdated plan kind of based on one of the previous projects similar to this, and we underestimated that plan, and therefore we are in this situation currently where we were not able to go out to bid in time for RFP for construction managers, and then have them go out to bid out the entire project and go through the proper process. Moving forward, I do want to let you know that, you know, with systems approach and procedures going forward, there'll be a new financial management and operation oversight team that will make sure that this project and other referendum projects do get completed as quickly as possible and in the timeline that we do present that they will be completed. So I'm certain I don't need to tell you the current condition of the play structure in the playground, but I'm just going to overview it. It's dated, it's due for replacement. The asphalt and concrete, obviously, the play structure specifically. The play structure equipment has been assessed. Immediate dangerous components and such have been removed. Some of them replaced. The following are some of the components, as you can see up there. Some of the decking was replaced in the last couple of years. a couple of the slides and the bridges. An additional slide that you're all aware of was removed and now has the aesthetically displeasing and not actually all that's a plywood on it. That slide is coming, has not been replaced yet, but it will be. So just to kind of give an example of some of the things we have replaced, the Clatter Bridge is what it's called in the center there. Some of the decking that we noticed a couple of years back was really in disrepair and did cause definite safety concerns were replaced. Slide that had been broken was replaced. And again, the slide that will be coming is the corkscrew slide. If anybody does remember it, coming from the third level of the structure will be replaced. Is the current playground currently safe, the equipment? It is. We did an assessment with our team. We have brought in our vendors and stuff to determine the needs for replacing certain things that would create those safety concerns. We will remove any plywood once we get the slide replaced, which should be in September or October. And the buildings and grounds team will continue to do regular inspections so that we can proactively address safety concerns here and get things much quicker than we have gotten in the past. So the timeline and the next steps, and I believe this was a link in the communication. So timeline was to put out RFP for construction manager and then take that for board approval in August. And then at that point, secure a construction manager for this project, with then the intent being that the construction manager, they take care of all of the bidding of all the different pieces and facets of the project itself, from earthwork and then the underground plumbing, fencing, asphalt, concrete, landscape, etc. So they will take the time to bid that out to multiple bidders. They will create a bid package for us based on that. And then that will be taken to the school board for final approval of the bid package itself. With then the construction begin date, we are looking to start in May. There may be potential. I know I said it, but we'll put it as May. But if the weather is better, we could potentially start the further north playground, which would not have as much impact on the school itself. But we are confident that if we start in May, that we will complete this entire project by September of 2023 for the start of the school year. So I did want to say what else is being done in the immediate future. So as indicated in the communications on July 8th as well, and as I said, we are replacing the slide. But part of this site improvement project was replacing the monument, or sometimes people call it a message board side. That project is in the process currently and is expected to be completed by October of this year of 2022 with a new LED message board side with messages on both sides. And we will be also installing a dodgeball pit. And that will be September, October of this school year for the kids to be able to use. And the nice thing about that is we'll actually be able to pull it off when we do the construction so that it can be reinstalled with the new layout and the new plan so we can reutilize it. And then, you know, again, in the immediate future, frequent inspections, addressing immediate safety concerns going forward. Just to kind of give you an idea of the monument sign here, it's already been designed. And it has the Washington Elementary School logo. In the center there, it won't say PTA unless the school wants to put it as PTA. That's the digital part of it. But that sign's already been designed, and it's just going through a process where it has to go to the city of Wauwatosa, an approval process with design review board. And once we get that approved, we'll have the company get it installed. And so we had an initial concept design created already for the play structure itself. So this is just it's not finalized. We have not purchased the equipment, but this is just to kind of give you an idea. And if you want to look at Lincoln Elementary School or Roosevelt is closer, it'll be in line with what those schools are. We certainly ADA accessibility was one of the most important factors. So it'll have ramps leading to the highest level that we can get them to. inclusive play so that students of all ability can use the structure. There'll be a 2 to 5 year old playground as well as a 5 to 12-year-old playground. Artificial turf is something that we are sticking with in the district since the start of creating these playgrounds in the start of the referendum. It is extremely ADA accessible and it gives site-wide access around the structure for all users. So as I indicated, but I wanted to talk about communication construction to begin May of 2023. Due to the scope of project completion and anticipated late summer, but before school starts in 2023-24, the Washington community will receive updates. There will be a link, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, attached to the school's website.
It's already there.
Yeah, okay, which you will get weekly updates on where the project is at. In the beginning here, there may not be as many updates until we start getting to the construction phase, but you will get weekly updates from us on where things are at. And I do want to say personally, I sincerely apologize for where we are at. This is the communication that I sent on July 8th is not the type of communication that I like to send. But I take responsibility for it. I just want to apologize to all of you for this inconvenience, but I want to ensure you that with our new things set up with a leadership team and all of that kind of stuff and myself, that this project will get done according to the timeline that I am presenting here tonight and that was communicated on July 8th. Questions, comments, and feedback, certainly myself. My email address is here, and Keith Reitman, the Chief Financial Officer, he was not able to be here tonight, but certainly if there's any additional follow-up questions, you can direct them towards him as well. And I'll just leave that screen up, and I'd like to, unless you have anything else to add, sir, it would be.
Good evening. Make sure I hit my mark that Jamie wants me to be at. Good evening, how are you? My name is Damon, I'm the superintendent here in the Wauwatosa School District. There's a component of this that I will take responsibility for. The way that a school district works is that ultimately Greg, as our department and our director of buildings and grounds, reports to a business manager or CFO. And we had an interim CFO this past year. The work that I assumed was happening between that interim CFO and Greg wasn't happening, didn't happen. Further, we were utilizing a timeline that in retrospect should not have been used. So if you point to the Roosevelt project, and I'm sure many of you followed the Roosevelt project, that project was late. Technically, it was late. It should have been done the first day of school. I think it was done by early November.
Correct.
So in retrospect, what we should have done is we should have taken a step back and looked at our timeline for Roosevelt. But I think under a lot of the different changes we had in the district this year, we were operating, Greg was operating, our Department of Buildings and Grounds was continuing to operate under the way we have done things. So the way we did things in the past wasn't appropriate and proper. And I think it caught up with us this past spring with this project. That's no excuse, but it's the fact. And so I'm here Greg can answer all the detailed questions that you may have about next steps. But what I wanted to share with you was, I think this is a collective failure of the district. It's just not on Greg. What we're doing to prove to you that this is just not lip service is that we have timelines in place. We have the blog that will be established that's already up. So you can see very clearly, it's not just you having to go to Mr. Russell, but you can see it yourself. And if it's not moving at the pace that we have articulated here this evening, then hold us accountable. So I think there was a slide there that talked about transparency, that slide is there for a reason. So I would be remiss if I didn't have a chance to get in front of you. You may have other questions for me, but in terms of the detailed questions, I'll turn it back over. Right. Thank you.
So I'll open it up to questions in the room. Yes.
Hi, I'm just wondering, in terms of the money that's been allocated for this project, that money is just sitting somewhere, like it's not going to go anywhere else, right? If that money is allocated and it's going to be used for park land.
Yes, so just for the viewers at home, in case they didn't hear you, the question was the money that was allocated for this project, that money's just sitting there. And is it the intent that it stays there for Washington Playground? That is correct, yes.
And the improvements, you're making a safety improvement, that's not coming out of that fund, that's money that's coming from somewhere else.
So the question is the safety improvements that we are doing in the meantime, because this project was delayed, the improvements that we're doing with replacement of the slide, is that coming out of the referendum dollars? It is not. It will come out of operating costs that we have in place for making such repairs.
An additional budget question.
Man, I think the things that Greg referenced are a great question. I think the thing that Greg referenced is our acknowledgement that there was a failure. And that the funds that have been set aside for the project overall has not been touched and will not be touched. But in addition, our conversation was one of, and we need to make things right, at least in the interim. And that should not come out of the cost, the overall cost that we estimated for the project.
Yes.
And the budget, given that the referendum passed in 2018, but that 2019, and the inflation has happened since then. Now the budget for this project is not like was approved in March of this year, but by next year, when we go out to buy, I think we all know our money is not going to go as far. Is there an opportunity to go back to the board next spring to essentially get an inflation adjustment for this project so that our kids still get essentially the equivalent value they would have gotten on the original timeline?
Right, so the question of inflation and where this project lands as opposed to now and the money that was allocated for, I can tell you that we did put a very healthy budget to this project in March for such things. And the reason that we want to go out to bid sooner than later, and even the construction manager going out to bid, is to lock those rates in. So that when it does come time to build in spring, that they've already had their subcontractors and everything bidded out. Yes.
Is there a reason that we have to wait until September to start this bidding process? And why?
Is there a reason that we have to wait till September to start the bidding process, and why is that? From where we are currently at, we had still hoped that maybe this project would go, but it would not. So we had to do communication, but the bidding process has actually started with our RFP to the construction manager. So we have to secure that first. You have to give construction managers multiple weeks to bid on the project, and then they go out and they bring in all their subcontractors, do walkthroughs and all of that to bid that process out. Yes, in the back.
So I had a similar question to the first and second row here. So for clarity, if the scope of the project changes, how are those decisions made? She was concerned about value. I believe there's probably some pickups that could happen with the added time that you guys have. And then second question, you're hiring a GC or is the district serving as a GC? You didn't determine the property manager or project manager. I just like to clarity, is the district the GC and you're hiring someone, or are you hiring a GC for this project?
So I'll answer the end question first. Are we hiring the GC for the project? Yes, the district is not the GC. The district has the ultimate decisions. But due to the multi things that this project entails, including the entire site, it is felt that it is definitely best to have a GC manage the entire project, bring in the subcontractors, keep them on track to make sure that we get this project done. I don't think I answered what was the first part of your question. I'm sorry.
So the first question to follow up to her is, I like the thought process, when we have a new time that we're working with, right? So the question was really focused on expense. I'm also interested in what can we pick up with the added time on the costing side. So the question is really if the scope of the project changes because of the pricing. How exactly the value is decided? I think you have lots of gains when you reset your schedule like you have.
So you certainly have losses and gains when you reset the schedule, no doubt. And I will, reiterate the fact that we did put a very, very healthy budget on this to include construction manager costs as well. And the project itself is actually almost completely designed. And it is the entire site, asphalt, concrete and everything. And I did utilize a CM at no cost to the district to give us a rough order of magnitude, they call it a ROM, on this project already to get to that number. Did that answer the question?
Just right away, so if you guys, let's just get into one industry example so we can understand how you're doing it. So let's just say one of your project points is repurposing the lot, something simple, not simple, but understandable, right? Let's say the GC comes back, you have your original request is plus 10%. We have an alternative to you that is going to change it to minus 15%. I can give you an example. How are those decisions get made? Because I understand you guys the design scope is set, but the whole thing changes because now you're working in a different environment at the time. You're on a different schedule, so you may come back. Your GC may come back to you with alternatives. How does the loss and gains of those alternatives possibly get reused, or I guess is there a process for that in the district?
So
Greg,
yes, Jamie.
I realize it's probably going to be a bit difficult with the length of that question, but if you could summarize again for the people online, because we can't really hear audience members in the room there.
So the question pretty much refers to the with the change of the timeline of the project and essentially not having a GC on board already, when the GC goes out to bid, and then what is the process if the GC comes back and offers alternatives and what have you, who makes those decisions, and things of that nature. Yes?
Yeah, so Greg, I'm trying to get you, if you guys are forced to be value engineer, I'm just trying to understand how does that process work. I mean, totally different line of work, but we've been involved in stuff that considered new construction. And the fact that you're going to GC right now, there's a lot of variables that could move forward. I'm just actually trying to understand how does that get managed on your end? Is that just all the communication that we receive, or is there some review process that happens if those changes become significant?
So the further reiteration on that to the video people is when it's in terms of like value engineering, especially because they'll present changes and again, who makes those decisions? So that is a process that is reviewed. You bring on a construction manager for that purpose, for bringing value engineering out, and those are discussions that are discussed at the district level. And then if there are significant changes to it, it would be presented as an update in the board meeting or what have you.
Okay.
Refresh my memory, what is like $125 billion allocated to this project?
So the question is there $125 million allocated to the project? No, the $124.9 million was allocated as a referendum as a whole. There is 1.4 allocated to this project. 1.4 million. No, yeah, $125 million. We could have a couple of schools here for sure. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Nice. Let you start.
Can you give a little background on why Washington wasn't bid out at the same time as like Roosevelt and Lincoln and some of the other projects?
So Washington's project was not even conceptually designed at the time that Roosevelt's already had been and was already in the design process. And that was during my interim term here is when I picked that up. There was nothing done in January of 2020 when I served as the interim buildings and grounds director with another one of our staff. There was not even concepts. There was nothing. So for that kind of a time frame, Roosevelt was already at that point. So there was time just enough, but as Dr. Means indicated, to be completed all the way in November. It should have been something that should have had at least conceptual designs and designs going prior to that point.
Can you clarify the scope of the project for like three play spaces, we have the fields, or I use that term loosely, for the kickball. But will we still have three play structures? Will they be separated north and south? What's the scope of this?
Okay, so clarifying the scope of the project. So you will still have the full-on north playground. It'll be enhanced, all new asphalt, brand new basketball hoops, new fencing, different layout, a little bit more green space involved with it to give it that park-like feel. You will still have, that's the north playground, you'll still have this south playground. The structures will be completely removed over here. That structure is being removed, being replaced with goggle ball pit area and other features, along with the better basketball courts and what have you. This structure over here, as I said, gets removed, and they completely new everything, new asphalt, new fencing, new concrete, new ramp. This project also does include an ADA accessible switchback ramp from 67th Street here to actually have true ADA accessibility to come up to the playground here, where that ramp currently is not truly ADA accessible. As well as that, on this side, I'm getting my directions confused. Instead of those 5 steps with our, aesthetically unpleasing railings, that will actually be ramped down and be completely ADA accessible from 68th Street. So that ADA accessibility is site-wide. So, yeah, you had to.
Next alignment, if you could ever, I've heard say that the design is nearly complete, which frankly is really disappointing to hear as a parent. But as my students throughout here, if they would be given any opportunity to have input to this play structure, obviously that's all one for the lifetime, one for the generation. And our older students have already missed out on the ability to even use it because of the delays in timing. So is there, now with having a whole school year, is there still an opportunity for any of the students or the community at large to give input to the design, or is it considered final and that?
There certainly can be tweaks made to the design, but the design is at a level where it is into the city for first review. I did have engagement with Mr. Russell, as well as we put out a Google thing to staff members as well to get some of that initial feedback and input. Who also talked to some of the students just based on what kind of things they would like to see. Ultimately, we would like to keep with what we have in place with the other ones, which were kind of identified by the Facilities Advisory Committee prior to referendum as far as ADA accessibility and inclusive play. So we want to keep it in line with those other schools so that those kids here have as much opportunity as everyone does at the other new play structures and such. Yes.
One, our community raised a lot of money for enhancements for this, and I don't see that in the design. Will that be then the opportunity that we get in the community to decide where that money goes and like what enhancements we want to see? For instance, like I know Lincoln got private education, which is a whole other thing I can talk about, to put in an outdoor education space in their playground. And so I'm just wondering when will we as a community get to talk about and get input as to where we want the funds that are community raised, how we want those to be.
Yeah, so the question is in regards to the money that the Washington community raised. So the answer is this: there are some certain opportunities for that money to be spent on this project. There is the possibility of an outdoor learning space to be added. There is the potential for additional play structure pieces that would not have been purchased otherwise with referendum dollars, and certainly other furnishings and stuff as well. That is something that that will not be Greg's decision to make whatsoever. That is certainly something that I will engage the PTA and such on, because it is money that was raised by this community. So I apologize that that's not in the slide, but I anticipate, summer's a little bit tougher. I mean, you guys are all great in being here today, but immediately I would anticipate that process starting late August at the latest.
Greg, we do have a couple of people online looking to ask questions as well, whenever you have an opportunity.
I'll let her finish her. She had 2 questions.
I appreciate that you did a preview section of the structure itself, but I'm wondering if there were safety evaluations done of the larger area, for instance, the black plastic pieces that kind of hold up the wood chips right now, like there's metal spikes sticking out of them that can run into all the time, and like if it's crumbling asphalt, that makes it really difficult. It's, obviously not acceptable for students who have mobility needs, and as well as just like safety concerns with like the signage on 15th Street, which I know that's partially city. But like we drive by the other schools and they have like all the lights and flashing, we have one sign that says school in the block. Like I'm just thinking like larger safety concerns around the entire building, not just the structure itself. Like has that been evaluated? How will those things go?
So the question is, have other safety concerns site-wide been looked at and inspected instead of just a play structure? So in regards to the crossing type things with the flashing beacon lights or what have you, not part of this project. It is a city project, but something that we look at from a safe routes to school process and all of that. I wouldn't be able to answer that question specifically currently, but it's certainly something that could be looked at. As far as the asphalt and stuff, our team does go through, and it will be part of this inspection to do our best to patch up cracks, trip hazards. We have done things where we have temporarily, ramped up a concrete trip hazard with hot patch asphalt and things of that nature to keep it safe.
So that inspection hasn't been done.
No, they do inspections like that all of the time. I mean, the playground's not going to be brand new until
I know that
2023.
Like,
Understood. So essentially, we're doing weekly inspections now of this structure. So that is something that I will make sure that our team takes a look at, but it was all initially inspected.
No weekly inspections be shared as a part of this communication that's supposed to be happening. Because as mentioned, there are several things that have not been addressed. The 2 slides, there's a big shit out of the pot. And I can like distracted herself every time she goes down the slide. And if you're doing weekly inspections, like why is that like, yeah, I understand it, it's not as sharp as it was, but like it's still a hazard. As just another example.
The tubes, the initial tube slide that had the hole in it from vandalism from some.
Greg, would you mind repeating that because we were unable
Yes, I'm
to?
sorry. So they're wondering if I can, if we can share the weekly inspections, and there's other items on there that are felt that might be safety concerns. So the answer, I wanted to reiterate that the 1 tube slide that was severely damaged by a landstone thing, that one has been removed. I would have to take a look at the other one, but it is safe to sand and dull the edges of things of that nature unless it's got a full-on hole in it. So I would like to switch, if I could, to some of the people online, Jamie, if you would.
Absolutely. Jennifer Cosgrove, you don't have your hand up, but you actually asked the first question. So you've got the microphone if you would like to ask it.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so my question is, well, first of all, I'm thrilled that there's going to be a Gaga ball pit. I think it's important to have some things on the concrete. Speaking just from a personal standpoint, my girls are both amputees. They wear prosthetic legs. The wood chips are impossible for them to navigate. So we are so excited to have a more accessible playground. But I'm wondering if in the meantime, also in addition to the Gaga ball pit, would it be possible to say update the basketball hoops or something? Another option for the the current pavement. They're not going to benefit from the slides or the, you know, the fixes, the temporary fixes, and neither will other kids too who have accessibility or mobility issues. So I guess that's just my question is, I don't know if that's a possibility, but just to consider that if there are any other updates to some of those hard surfaces that could be done sooner rather than later, is that even possible?
Yeah, I mean, as far as the surfaces themselves, it's certainly something that we're going through and we will continue to go through to try and patch and all that. In regards to the basketball hoops, actually, we do believe that we have a couple of very good condition basketball hoops to replace those dilapidated ones in the short term, because we own them already. We don't have to spend money on them. But you will be getting brand new basketball hoops with the project itself.
Okay, next is Lindsay Rust. You have the microphone so you can ask your question.
Okay, I am a second grade teacher at Washington, and I'm just imagining that first day of school, knowing that some kids are expecting a new playground while others might have been informed this summer. I'm imagining a lot of questions, and I would love as a teacher to be like, that's a really great question. Someone is going to be here maybe at lunch to explain what happened. Is that something you guys have considered, how you guys are going to update the kids?
That's a great question, Mrs. Russ.
I'm going to let Mr. Russell answer that question.
Yes, that has crossed my mind as far as a plan for the students and how to communicate that. And so once we have teams in and teachers here in August, we'll have a conversation about how we can communicate and onboard students and families so that we can help them understand where we're at. Does that answer your question? Oh, she's gone already.
I'm sorry, I muted her. Lindsay, yeah, she raised her hand again. Okay, you got the microphone again.
I think I love that you're already thinking of this, Mr. Russell, but like, as an adult, it was good hearing the message from the people who had like these plans. And I just feel like it could be really a positive thing for the kids to hear it from the people who are making these decisions, if that makes sense. I don't know. I think it would mean a lot to them. I know it meant a lot to me to read the email, and after listening to you, Greg, like, you know, I could hear a sincere apology. I don't know, just something to think about.
Yep, thank you, Lindsay.
Thank you.
For sure.
Okay, next is Bethany. Forgive the pronunciation if it's wrong. Teeple or Teeple. You've got the microphone. I'm going to leave the microphone open and just let me know when we're done, so I'm not prematurely cutting people off.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I apologize if I am repeating some of the things that were said in the room. But I first just wanted to say, I kind of wanted to just chime in on behalf of parents that have been at Washington forever. I've been a parent for over 15 years at Washington, and this playground issue has been around for a long time. I was around when parents kind of spearheaded initiative to get playground installed on the North Playground. And so I think it's been really disheartening to hear this news that the project is delayed, especially since kids were promised something. I also stand on behalf of lots of children here in my household, and they're bummed out. And so I told them I would kind of hop on and speak for them, because we have biked to Washington almost daily to watch the ground break until we got the news that that wasn't going to happen. So I guess I just kind of wanted to say that, and that this community, it's a community playground. You know, it's not just Washington. There's people who've paid specifically to the Timberwolf Trot to see these enhancements added. And it's really hard when you're driving around Tulsa to see all the other really great playgrounds. And, you know, I've had to drive the kids other places this summer to play, which is kind of sad because can't wait to stay at our home playground when that's available. So I guess my question is, to piggyback kind of off of Jennifer and Lindsay, like, is there anything else that we can provide for these kids to, when that message is sent to them in the fall, that they don't get a new playground? I love the Gaga Ball pit, like Jennifer said, you know, the possibility of the new basketball hoops, but can we kind of beef that list up anymore? Is there any room for, you know, I don't know, a knack box that's filled with new equipment that the kids can play with, or maybe a movable outdoor classroom that would be provided? I'm just brainstorming, but I do feel like they almost deserve a little bit more coming into the school year. And I appreciate your honesty, and I appreciate your, you know, coming here and standing before us. And I understand that you can't change what has already happened, but I hope that we can maybe get some more things in place moving forward.
Yeah, it's certainly something that I will have a discussion with Mr. Russell as it pertains to not only the communication to the students, you know, when they come back and all of that, but perhaps some other things that we could do in the short term here to provide them while we're waiting for this project that was delayed to be complete.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Greg, no one else has got their hands raised online, so I think you're good.
Okay, I'll move to the room then. Yes.
Greg, thank you for being here and for owning the mistake that happened. Mistakes happen in projects of this scale. Obviously, great job with your schools, their playground, and the buildings are fantastic. Dr. Means, this question more for you. So we look at the budget, $1.4 million that was allocated to the current budget in 2018. Looking at 2019 to 22, that dollar amount is now $1.622 million. So we've lost $222,000 of buying power for the playground. So no, I mean really, ultimately the school district we'll get 16% less for our playground because there's a mistake there, right?
So the question, if I could take that and you can tack onto it, Dr. Means, the question is, you know, the $1.4 million that was allocated in 2018, and now that number, if you factor what it would be now, is 1.662. I'm paraphrasing. So that number that was allocated in March of 2022, not 2018. And it was, again, back to your question, it had a healthy budget amount on there for things unforeseen or what have you.
On the playground.
How does that compare to the other playgrounds? So Roosevelt's project came in under 1.3. And that was just on the previous year. The other ones were with the new schools. It would be hard for me to part out what their whole entire playground would be. But it's comparable as far as the structures and such go.
There's a reason why it's not expected for September or October.
Because it was ordered and it takes time with lead times and supply chains are just not. It was just recently ordered. No, the Gaga pit was part of the project as a whole. We had intended to do the entire project as a whole. And when we came with this communication in front of you, it had been determined prior to this communication out that there's got to be some things that we can do at least in the short term to show that we are moving forward to some degree.
You have safety experts on your staff?
We have our building leads have a sheet that they go through to do their safety inspections. And we have had the vendors out for, I believe this is a Minnesota, Wisconsin playground, which is game time actually. We haven't had them out to take a look, yes. We do not have, I wouldn't say that I have an ultimate play structure safety person on my staff.
Aren't you worried about the liability side of it? The playground that's out there right now?
Worried about the liability side of it. So per one of my slides, I kind of showed you in the last couple of years, the components that we should have replaced because of safety concerns have been replaced. If you can see out there, a significant amount of the decking was replaced. That was decking that was determined to be unsafe. The bridge was completely falling apart and in disrepair and was unsafe. So that was replaced. And there was an additional bridge that was also replaced along with slides that had holes, with the exception of the last slide that has to be replaced.
And that's what the experts recommend.
That is correct.
There's a lot of risk in having kids playing games on equipment this go.
Correct.
I mean, that, I mean, the amount of broken arms from someone who are and falling onto the wood chips, like, I don't understand how
So
that is like safe for kids.
the question, in regards to kids falling into the wood chips, so the wood chips that we get are considered, believe it or not, ADA accessible and approved for this, and we do replace them every year, every summer. And when spots become bare and all of that kind of stuff, we have a stash of them, that we come in and we bring trucks in and we put it in there for that. It is certainly not the artificial turf with the 3-inch foam underneath, no. Yes.
I feel like I did not with that concern in terms of the rest of the area. I know you say that you inspect it regularly, but if it's being inspected regularly, I'm not really sure why these things haven't been addressed. Again, those metal bars that are sticking out over there, you know, even there was a year ago, I think there was a rope that someone had tied from like a bush to a fence and he like got clothesline on it running, like if it's being regularly inspected, why are these things not being taken care of? That I'm just frustrated about, like, you know, there were dead branches that were hanging over the playground for a pretty significant amount of time last year. Like, I guess I'm wondering, so you're saying that it's getting regularly inspected, then why are these things being taken care of? I think it's being inspected.
So the
Like, as a
immediate,
parent, I wanna know,
the
like,
immediate-
if goes to school in September and is not gonna get injured from something that is unsafe, that could have been made safe.
the immediate clear and present things were removed, and anything that comes up gets removed or what have you. We removed, I believe it was 3 trees in the last, I don't know how many months, because they were considered to be unsafe, split or what have you, dead branches. We had the city come out and help us with the overhanging dead branches on all of that. Part of the wall, as you knew, the Lannon stone wall had fallen, and we put it back up and made sure that it was safe so it would not fall again. I mean, we address them as they come up. We are inspecting them as we go. I'm not saying that we look at every square inch every day, most certainly not. But we are inspecting them and we are addressing them as we come up. Hence the stuff that I showed on the play structure as well. It's not just stuff that happened this year or anything. That's stuff that happened over the course of, hey, we recognize this, we need to take care of it. Hey, we recognize this, we need to take care of it.
I would get part of.
That's what I was gonna, how do you compete with the maintenance of it? Like, are we not maintaining these things? Is this
Oh, yeah.
like the Lannon stone wall falling, like?
How
That's-
often do you do the security or the safety?
The safety checks of the structures are done weekly
Not the
Five.
structure, the
by my staff, operations staff.
structure, but like the whole ground, like not. Like how often is that done at the same time?
Our buildings and grounds lead do a walk around of the building every single day, looking for anything that they can find that would be a safety concern, or even to the point of a broken window or what have you. There are certainly times when things happen and they're not seen or what have you. And when we get feedback from people or somebody indicates that there's an issue, we take care of it.
That's my question is, what is the process for parents that see something? Who do we call, where to go? Like, Mr. Russell has a ton on his plate. I don't feel like Mr. Russell should be the first go-to with all, oh, there's a branch over here, there's a brick over here. The retaining wall is still falling down and may have been quote unquote fixed. But it was not cemented, it was not backhanded and paper-based and whatever was behind there. It is still in nothing for my children. And I really, it's hard to see it still not with it. What is the process when a parent sees something? Who do we go to? Where do we go? Who do we call? And what is the expected response time?
So I know that there is,
Greg, could you just repeat the question?
what is the process for, parents who have concerns or what have you? They cannot, always be expected to go to Mr. Russell all the time, who has quite a bit on his plate. What is the process for how they can point out concerns that they find? I know there is something there is something on the website where people can, it's like a contact form or something like that where you can raise questions on the website. Is that correct, Dr. Means, if I'm not mistaken? Because I have received those. I don't have the link or anything, but it is on the website to be able to bring concerns to the district's attention.
What,
The Wauwatosa School District website.
okay, not Washington is on the, so it would be under buildings and grounds, under financial, under where, like, where to go? I don't know.
I think you're raising a good point.
How are we supposed to?
Perhaps what we can do is with that wall, that is two-way communication. Where there's some type of mechanism where parental concerns are able to be received. At the same time, I love the idea of having some type of updates regarding the safety inspection of the entire ground. And I think what I'm hearing from the dialogue is that since we haven't done our due diligence and completed the project that was supposed to be done 2 years ago, there's room for us to look at the entire grounds and look at everything, because it's too narrow of a scope to just talk about the playground. I message delivered, we will find a way to let that two-way communication and to also communicate where we are.
Yes.
So I have a question about some of the other playgrounds, like the Lincoln playground. Before that Lincoln playground went in, it was like this, it was a big flat asphalt spot. And now it's not. There's a lot more like green spacing and artificial turf. It's a lot less blacktop desolation, right? There's not that much parking that I have observed on this parking lot. Is there plans to pull the playground a little bit more from its existing footprint towards the front and take some of that blacktop over here that doesn't really necessarily use all that much? The same thing on the other side. We have this massive blacktop area, which is good for certain things, but it also is very much a large blacktop area. Is there any way to make it more quote unquote green, skateboarding, or a little bit more less blocky, safer?
So the question essentially, in short, is there a way to eliminate some of the asphalt, pull the play structures this way because we have a lot of asphalt and not quite as much green space? The play structures, it is the intent to pull them out from there, to pull them more around the corner over here. And it will reduce some of the blacktop, but the blacktop is also used by students. It's not just the play structures either. Kids play foursquare, kids play kickball. And on the north playground over there, it is the plan to shore it up a bit and create more of a green space area there, as well as the gaga ball pits. And the hope is that if we move forward with an outdoor classroom here, that will be in that space over there, which will be green space with butterfly garden and all of that, to create more green space as well.
How far along, and I'm listening to some of the questions, how far along are we in the design? Are we 80% down the road or 90% down the road? Because as I'm downloading the questions, it feels as if the community is saying, may we please have one last opportunity to look at maybe have an opportunity to look at how it's designed and give input. So I guess it's a question I don't know the answer to. How far, since we don't have a construction manager on site yet, is there still an opportunity for that type of engagement?
So the design is in first round review with the city of Wauwatosa, which has not occurred. It still does allow us time to make some changes. Yes.
Greg.
The timing to that it would seem to be like, if we're not talking about starting construction till next month, that the design review with the city is not the critical path to finishing the project. Is that accurate, or is the city design the critical path, the timeline for next year?
The review is not by the design review board. I just want to clarify, it's with the city civil engineering department. And it is in first round review, and it does not take a great amount of time. They have had it for a bit. They just have not reviewed it yet. So it will not affect this timeline where it's currently at right now.
In other words, this team, this community can come back with some modifications, submit it back to the city by October, and it won't delay the timeline that has been discussed. Is that a state assessment?
Yes, I mean, if it was a major change, like, you know, we're gonna put artificial turf over here or something like that as a field or something, that would be significant and that would require a different process and that would affect the timeline. But as far as how things are laid out and where certain green spaces could be or some landscape redone, that is certainly still for being able to change.
Greg, can I just want to put something up on the screen here. This would be in response to the question about who to contact. Do you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so this is the Washington website, and over on the right here, there's a contact us button, right? So it gives you all the information, obviously, about the principal, but further down, there's also sections on pretty much everything you can think of, for example, safety. So if you expand that, it'll give you the first, second, and third contacts there of who to reach out to. Hopefully that helps with that question.
Thank you, Jamie. Yes. For safety, Laura is the safety coordinator. Yes. Sorry.
So given that the government of the state would have been because of deferred maintenance, because of delays, what is the plan once we have this new playground to maintain it being amazing and being acceptable? And part of the issue, in terms of where we are getting the money, is because we have a new structure. It's beautiful, it's fine, and lack of maintenance. So what's the new plan?
Part of the issue is I want to clarify. I know that it is dated. I know that there are certain things that, you know, are in disrepair or what have you, but I go back to the slide where it's not deferred maintenance. It's not that we didn't maintain as much as we can. The structure is, don't quote me on this, but I have it in my office, but it is over 12 years old. It is beyond its useful life. And that's when you replace structures, all those things with decking and the thousands of dollars we've spent along the way, including not just the last 3 years, but years prior to maintain that, has been maintained. So the plan going forward would be to continue, and we need to do a better job, myself and our operations and maintenance coordinator, to make sure that we are doing these inspections and that they are recorded. And the one thing that I'm thinking currently of is that we do have a preventative maintenance system in this district that we can very easily create one, and it takes accountability to our staff and ultimately me as a department head, yes, but those are kinds of things that I would like to put in place going forward.
May I answer your question a little differently? Yes, and I would say that one thing that I need in my role to avoid this from happening in any school community again is that I've asked Greg and our CFO to put together a long-range facility plan. So we know, so it's not, we're not waiting 20 years after this structure is put in place, that there's some type of pace and cadence that we put in place to alert us, and more importantly, the board. Because I think the board and I are in a position where we're reacting. I think I heard the word earlier, reacting. And I don't like reacting. I like being able to plan. And so that long-range facility plan, which is part of our strategic plan, will be solidified in the next few months. And you will see that we will, on a 5-year basis, take a look at all these items. So it's not a reaction, or we're not waiting on a parent to tell us, my child broke her arm, but we're constantly and consistently looking at this.
Oh, yeah, she had.
What's the reasonable time that they can expect?
So the question is time frame, a reasonable time frame to get an answer. You should have an answer within 28 to 48 hours. Yes.
Is there a possibility this summer to still strike, like the 4 square pits, and like,
Oh, that should be in there. I apologize. It should be in my presentation. We are planning on our B&G team. They do know how to strike the lines, on restriping the lines. Yes.
maybe add some other stuff too? I mean, you go to the playground, there's a lot of different games that can be played on laptop, that can strike it.
Yeah,
That would add, you know, a little bit more pizzazz to the parking lot.
it's something that we can take a look at. I don't know who was all around when we did GE Day, but you know, that was part of it where we even the 4 squares themselves, I think we did different colors and it really kind of spruced it up. So we are planning on doing that this summer. Yes.
I think a common theme that is disappointing and upsetting to families that are currently at Washington is the past year, we have put aside the condition of the ground, the play structure, all of it, because it was, well, we're getting a new playground next year. So bringing up these things up just tonight, well, there's cracks in the pavement, the basketball hoops are not that great, the wood chips, the railroad tie was named, all of this, we could have brought up last year at the beginning of the year, and maybe would have if we knew that it was going to be this long of a wait. Now that we have seen other elementary schools look like hassle compared to what our kids are walking on, I think that's what I just want to localize is so upsetting, that the comparison is unreal. And is there any other Band-Aid that can happen this summer, like Mrs. Russ said, like you said, can we make little improvements this summer, patching the asphalt? You didn't answer that earlier. Is there going, it sounds like you will fix cracks if they need to be. Is that happening on Cedar Black Path this summer?
Correct, yes. Any patching that needs to be done, especially with, you know, holes or what have you, or major cracks that create a lip hazard or what have you, will be band-aided. To your point, yes, that is happening this summer. Yes, in the back.
I just have another question on the new design. Are we getting rid of the prison fence out here, where little monkeys can climb out the kids themselves all on the concrete, or are we doing like a more Lincoln fence that they have there?
So question is about the fence along 67. So it is not in the plans to be quite as tall, but it is necessary there for the reasons that kids are playing balls and all of that, and the hill is immediately right there. It needs to unfortunately be taller than your Lincoln fence because the playgrounds are not quite butted up to it. Otherwise you have balls and stuff going into the road. I will say that it is spec'd out as black coated vinyl instead, so that it's not galvanized or what have you.
So there will be a fence replacement.
There will be a fence replacement, absolutely. Yes.
Do you have a fence replacement? Okay. I don't know, vinyl versus galvanized. I don't know if it's much. It's different, like deep link or something.
It's still your chain link fence.
It's still chain link.
Yep. Many of the other schools do have that as well around their play structures. So
There's like the pool.
I know it's like a wrought iron type of looking decorative fence type thing.
Or the question would be, the interior fence at the bottom being more decorative, and then above, let's say 12 feet, count the chain link, or about 8 feet, count the chain link. Because there's so much something to ask. Again, it could be something to ask when we get the construction answer. If there's a way to do a level.
Sure, I can certainly raise that question and see what we could potentially do there.
The scene is because of, I mean, also, our neighbors, we're one of the tightest schools that doesn't take up a whole city block. I think on what maybe or Jefferson, we'll look at that, but we have neighbors on both sides of us. Does this include also replacing fencing for our neighbors? Or kind of how does that interface work on both ends of our property?
It would be replacing any fencing that surrounds the entire perimeter of the playground. The site.
Greg, just to give you a heads up, we do have a hand raised in the forum.
Okay. Sure, I'll take that.
Okay, Bethany, you have the microphone.
Again, I'm sorry if I didn't hear this, or you might have responded to another question that I didn't hear, but I feel like in listening to everybody, could there be a phase 1 and a phase 2 and still get that phase 1 done this year? That would be more of a green space phase that would just be like part of what ends up happening next year, since that's already your plan. I know you talked about the kids using the asphalt, but there is plenty of asphalt to be used. I don't know if that's an idea or an option.
So there's not a suitable amount of time to do any sort of phase 1 in regards to the playground as a whole. The landscape and everything is tied into, you know, the different elevations and everything with the new asphalt and all of that. And even if we started, for instance, the north playground, going out to construction manager and then having that bid out, as you can see from the timeline, we'd already be into September and October before we're even breaking ground. And then the month of November comes and, you know, winter hits. So no, there would not be a suitable way to phase the project at this point in time. To answer your question, Bethany?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
In the same vein of getting ahead in planning, is there a way to see plans for the Gaga pit and also striking the parking lot with the planning advice? And when we get stuck there?
So you're looking for a plan for the Gaga pit and
How Gaga pit's gonna be set up, where it's gonna be set up, and also striking the parking lot, what we put out there to make the next.
sure, I think I could certainly put something together. The Gaga ball pit, I mean, I have not determined the location. I think, you know, maybe,
Again, where we at, we get ahead of that.
I understand.
It makes sense for
It's one that can be moved. So. And
Message delivered. I think,
Yeah.
understood. I think we need to approach this project at Washington a little differently. And so whatever we're planning to do, if we can share it with the community for feedback, then move forward. I think that's what I'm hearing. We can work that out. That makes sense.
I guess we could facilitate more of that sharing. The PTA does have every other month, that's something that we need to have. And can facilitate a monthly meeting to have building the ground come and update us or something like that. We need to be more in context. Something, if it's just the board members of the PTA that we can share and facilitate with weekly information. We're really trying to increase the communication because of COVID and reacting to everything. We want to get ahead of it. We want to present, hey, this is what's going on for the month, for the next 2 months. And then here's a whole bunch of dates that we think, okay, sorry, I have to schedule it, but at least the information is there. We do have a large information that has been delineated to go towards enhancement of the said playground. So I think making sure that you are very aware that we have a dedicated PTA. We have dedicated hands and feet, and we can be on their feet. If you need more people to get it done tomorrow, let us know. The communication, like, again, the reacting doesn't need to be a reaction. Let's get together on this and maybe have them before the first day of school, we can be ready. Like, it's not, I mean, I don't know, I don't know what the district is everybody working full time throughout the summer, or is it, I don't know exactly what protocol is there, and teachers are off, but I think most people are in the office here, if you will, throughout the summer, but there's also parents at home that may have a little more time during the summer to help and facilitate some stuff. If there are additional things that need to happen, please consider reaching out, or as you know, have things throughout the communicate with the PTA or like however that needs to happen. There's a lot of ideas. Obviously, there's a lot of things that we can help in the community because we just want to get this done and see that it gets done. So if you guys are like, oh, well, we're gonna be on vacation for a couple weeks, maybe we should wait another couple weeks. I think that's important to reach out for help. At this point, we all need to work together and come together as a community as much as needed.
Mr. Russell indicated that moving forward, there will be a B&G, buildings and grounds component to PTA meetings this year. So there may be a short update, there be maybe larger updates, but we'll make that a standing agenda item on your PTA meetings moving forward this year. Until the project is completed.
Another place for people to know that they can see something, hear something.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Yes.
So I'm just say comment, I think I just got to meet superintendent means that I didn't acknowledge that we as a family, Mr. Russell has been fantastic in Washington, it's a great place to have our kids. So thank you guys. Stand up there, clarifying here. So I think you mentioned a couple times in the last answer, this is maybe something to consider. You guys have taken contact with the community, you know, maybe some thoughtful approaches to the process, and maybe, you know, we celebrate some of the milestones of the project, maybe build some positivity and some excitement about it, as opposed to project start. Project done, right? And maybe we can build some of that back. I know there's a lot of tension, we've heard people talking about it, people are not happy. It is what it is, to a degree, so how do we get constructive about the process? You're a lot of people asking for that, so what's on my head. I'm encouraging you guys to think about the neighborhood and think what it and here's what you got. So how do we get some positivity and make the project more of a success than everyone not talking and being negative to each other, right?
Thank you. Yes.
Sorry, the thought that I was talking about catching up with the program. What is it that you're saying to prevent further vandalizing that as we look into on? There has been like the library, like multiple times, like 3 or 4 times, and then the vandalization here, I'm like, I know, like, are those cameras working out there? Like, I know that that's partially like a issue maybe, but like also like, what are we, like, what is the district doing to prevent us to put in this $1 million playground here, like to prevent it being vandalized? It's not just the flag that's gotten vandalized, but like other things have been vandalized around our school community.
I don't know that there's,
More lighting, I don't know.
Greg, could you just make sure to summarize that, please, so we can.
question becomes, you know, because, and I certainly referred to the slide that was vandalized earlier. But what are things that are being done to prevent further vandalism, especially if we're going to put this, you know, massively expensive play structure on, and how are we going to prevent that? You know, are the cameras working over there? Things of that nature. We do have perimeter cameras here. I can certainly work with Mr. Price there to make sure that we have suitable coverage. I can't say that I would have an ultimate plan that can fully prevent any vandalism whatsoever, because kids are kids. I think part of these inspections need to include and should already be included into vandalism that does happen, so that we get it immediately. Police reports are filed when vandalism happens, pictures are taken, and that's about the extent of what I can do in that regard. We do look at cameras. And sometimes they do show the events happening, but unless that person can be clearly identified, that is where we involve our SROs a lot of the times too, and sometimes even the principals, because they might recognize a student or a student from another school that may have done that. So that process will continue. I wouldn't have a plan to.
I guess like as we're reaching outside of it, look at like lighting or like things that would deter. I don't agree that kids are kids in the standardized. I don't think my kid's kid is play. I think that like there are things that, you know, landscaping things or things that can be done as part of this project.
Certainly think the lighting is something that can be looked at here, yes. Any further questions in the room?
Are there, will this be saved where we can read the comments that are online?
This is being-
Hold on.
I'm sorry, what?
Nope.
No.
Greg. We do have one hand raised. We're not making comments here in the chat. I'm asking people that if they have a comment to raise their hand and verbalize it during the meeting. We do have one person that has their hand raised, by the way.
Jamie, is this being recorded?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that will be a way to refer back to it.
Sarah Perdita we're gonna, let's upload and she was entirely with the show, the entire interview.
You said you had a hand up, Jamie?
Yes, we do. Ira. Shoot. Sorry, that's my phone. Ira, you have the microphone now.
Lou, I'd first say that I think you should be reading comments that are coming because this is a public forum, and unfortunately, some people are not able to get online and ask questions. So this is a forum that you should be able to communicate with. My comment is that I think the school district has a lack of communication. I think we have a great communication from students, parents to the principal, but I think it's lacking to the higher. And I would request that we have a weekly update of the status of all the things that we need to complete with this referendum. It's very upsetting, and I know a lot of parents I've talked to are upset about this as well, that we've all worked hard to advocate to help get this passed, yet we're the ones who are left short, and the excuse of it is just not acceptable. I cannot run my business and have that excuse and not lose my job and be held. This is taxpayers' dollars that people have come together to work towards. We were left out and forgotten. So I would request that we get a weekly update, because that's going to be one way that we make sure that we stay on track and open up the line of communication from the community member, school, and the administration.
Thank you. I know the communication has been poor from the higher level. We will be having the link that will be on the website as well. I believe the Washington website for that weekly update and weekly communication opportunity going forward.
No one else has their hands raised online, Greg.
Okay.
And again, that was a no, we don't see any comments. On the video right now on the chat, there's 22, we don't see any, we don't get to see any of those on the recorded Zoom meeting.
Jamie, did you hear the question?
No, if you could repeat that, please.
The question is, again, we don't see any of the comments. She's referring to that in the chat. You can see that there's 22 chats there.
22 chats or 22 messages. There is, but they're the people that have spoken. We can post this transcript. That's fine. But I mean, there's nothing that's in here that hasn't been verbalized by attendees, but we can certainly post a transcript as well. That's not an issue.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Any further questions? Again, I do appreciate you taking the time to be here today. And I appreciate the continued working together, as you had indicated, and communication going forward, absolutely. So that we, despite where we are, we can make sure that this happens. So, thank you for your time.